Like, is it the knowledge that's really getting me to the next level where I feel closer to an expansive state, or is it the wisdom from within?
Welcome to Exploring the Edges. Let's get into it.
Thank you for being organized.
Oh, yes, of course. Of course. I think it's my Virgo moon. She loves it. The Virgo moon loves this because she's like has her pen and her bullet points out. Like nothing I love more than going like 6 bullets deep in a document. It just keeps making like more and more bullets. Like the Virgo moon loves that.
I love it.
Yes, so I just wanted to sort of let us talk a little bit, whatever feels right about how this concept was born, how this conversation was born, how the circle was born, exploring the edges, and also honoring the artist's way.
Yeah.
And just, talking about how that really created a lot of space for us to jump into these higher level conscious conversations. And also, I know you and I, Christy, we have a long history of conscious conversation, and we're so grateful for that in our relationship. And wouldn't it be just a blessing and a gift if we could open up that conscious conversation to people who maybe don't have access to that in their own circles? And sort of honoring what the tenets are of conscious conversation, this dialogue. And I think Jen, you've sort of touched on this so beautifully that, it's just a conversation.
Yeah, it's just a conversation. It's like there's no judgment, there's no ego involved trying to prove, like my point is the right point. It's just a conversation across the board, and you can take what you need from it and learn. And yeah, I think it's really important that it's just a conversation. This is not a lesson that we're trying to teach anybody to say like we've learned this and this is the way. So it feels
Absolutely.
very important. Yeah, it's just a chance to get together and chat and think about things maybe in a different way that we haven't before.
Chat about the wild things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let all the ideas just flow. Let them
Yeah.
flow and then just sit in them a while and see what
Yeah.
marinates, find out what it leads to. Because a lot of times when we're talking, I feel like I have no idea where things are coming from or where they're going or why I'm even wanting to share. But it's so potent that I walk away from our conversations for a week. I'll be thinking of the things we talked about. It just is, yeah, it's really beautiful. So I'm excited to be able to share that with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been enriched my life so much this last year. So
And so
yeah.
beautiful to think of them as doorways opening, because we don't always know like when that thing hits and we hear something said a different way or hear something for the first time, or even when we hear something and we have a strong response to it, like absolutely not. No, I don't believe this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
No,
sounds
and
like
then
you.
you sit in it, like even like lunar cycles go by and you get brought back to the same idea and maybe it's just phrased a different way or you have some more space in your system or they're just really doorways that are opening. And some of the things that we're going to talk about, we don't even believe ourselves, right? We're just talking about these ideas that sit on the edges without having strong opinions ourselves. And I think really the magic of modeling these conscious conversations, having that active listening, time for reflection, like you've said, Christy, non-judgment, these are all the tenets of conscious conversation. And so as far as we can elevate the conversations that we're having with everyone into this conscious conversation model, like the more we'll be able to share ideas and also receive ideas ourselves. And so I just wanted to kind of touch on the tenets of this conversation being a conscious conversation and sort of what makes it that way and how much value we've gained as individuals and together in just this circle,
Yeah.
having those conscious conversations.
We have been talking about being on different places like on the path, right? Like you and Jack have been doing this journey consciously longer than I have. Like I've been doing a lot of work for years and years and years. But just it was really this summer where I felt like I meditated for the first time, where I did my first, well, I mean, I had done one shamanic journey before, and maybe we can talk about that in a different episode. Maybe we'll talk about these journeys.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also like felt like I didn't do it, didn't have like any feedback from the person about what happened and things like that. But like consciously journaling meditating and even like really sinking into meditation. It was probably October, November, because we were in this house, feeling a connection with my guides, November in this house. And even though I'd like felt it before, I didn't realize what it was. So it just feels like it's really interesting. And, like for the viewers and the listeners, everybody's going to be on a different place on their path, right? Maybe they haven't started and this is what gets them interested in starting, or maybe they're deep into it. But I think just having a conversation from different perspectives and being able to feel into the conversation from different places, it's going to change the questions that come up and it just changes the conversation. And I think that it can just bring more consciousness to have people from different places. And maybe we have guests sometimes, and maybe, the listeners also like bring a new avenue. Maybe somebody will ask something that's something we can talk about on the podcast. And
Yeah, and
yeah,
it feels like it is like bridges. We're bridging to each other, right?
yeah,
Like we're bridging and then bridging again and bridging again. And the better we can be at making things simple, right? And
yeah, exactly.
basic, the better the bridge will hit a lot bigger
Yeah,
spectrum, right?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, and I really value that. I value your input having having just started your path because I feel like it keeps it all connected and it's more relatable because I mean I have been retired for a couple of years and I've been able to really throw myself into studies and that's a lot of big words. So it's really nice to have someone to like balance it out a little and say, "Wait a minute, let's talk about that," or I think that's valuable for all of us, including myself. So yeah,
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 important.
and Jen, oftentimes you bring really profound wisdom that
Yes.
is not that wouldn't be like who's somebody who's just meditated for the first time. Sometimes you can speak into the transcendent states of meditation in such a way that you wouldn't think that somebody who is meditating for the first time is speaking into them.
mm.
So I think that what you said is true. And there is this nonlinear, this is the part of it, right? There's this nonlinear approach to intuitives, and you also are an intuitive. Sometimes we
Yeah,
have this knowledge, we don't know where it came from or where it originated or why we know the things that we do. So I can appreciate you framing yourself as a student
mm.
and also being a teacher. There's
Teacher.
Yeah, of
two
course.
two things at once.
Yeah, because you bring a different perspective. So then I think in bringing a different perspective, it automatically makes you a teacher.
Hmm.
I go to school and I don't think that I'm like the only teacher there. I'm constantly learning from the kids,
Hmm.
whether they teach me something new, whether they ask a question that I don't know the answer to, and then I have to look it up, whether they're teaching me patience, like
Yes.
all of the things, like I'm also constantly learning.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
and
I
it's
really
all
love your
separate from
grounded
me.
perspective. For me, you're very earthy, and it does bring it all down to earth, which I really feel like I need as a balance for myself. Like when you were just talking about a
Amen, Chrissy.
conversation, yeah, a conversation you had on the playground, and it was like the most grounded conversation. And I know in that situation, I would have started like my heart would have started to flutter and I would have been like, I don't know what to say. And I'm just going to tell them to ask their parents, And you had like the perfect, the perfect grounded answer that was able just to anchor in love and light in that situation. And that's just so valuable. So, yes, all of that.
Chrissy, what a beautiful insight
Yeah, thanks,
because,
Christy.
yeah, that is so true. That's one of Jen's gifts,
Yeah.
which is great that we have you on the podcast.
Yeah, Gemini.
Christy and I can sometimes get a little carried away. Being our natal Mercury's in Gemini. And yeah, today, even interesting, Jen mentioned that the Mercury Cazimi is today in Aquarius, which just feels like what a beautiful, astrological support of the birth of our
Yeah,
podcast.
communication.
Yeah, what a beautiful support.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because but both Jenny and I are educators and yeah, I retired from the public school system and I feel like in the past couple years since I've been retired, I've really been able to look into myself and decide like what is it like, is it the knowledge that's really getting me to the next level where I feel closer to an expansive state, or is it the wisdom from within? And going to that wisdom within, we each hold our unique wisdom special to ourselves and our path that includes all of the experiences that we've gained, and we can't ever really truly walk in anybody else's shoes except for to hear and listen and to share. And so I feel like in sharing that unique wisdom that we all have, we are the teachers that just it stimulates like a little new a new piece of information that can take you on path, and it makes our like journey so colorful when we're sharing with each other. So as much as we're learning from each other, our journeys are also sharing with each other. It's just reciprocal in the classroom, or it goes for relationships and stuff in your life. Yeah, it's all about the expansion, right?
Yeah, and I think the truth is that if at any point any one of us thought I have an absolute truth, I hold this absolute truth and I am the teacher of it, like I think then we sort of lose the mystery, we lose the plot a bit because this whole human experience is, you know, an experience, leaning into these truths and we get really close to things that we feel like are tenets we can hold as truth. But I think, at this point in my journey, I still am open to learning more about those things. There are no absolute truths. And I think that this is what allows for so much exchange and information that we're not cutting
Yeah.
each other off. As soon as we think, oh, this person's there's so many ways that we divide ourselves, right? Like we could talk about them all another time. But as soon as we are open instead of closed, I think we can really allow a good exchange.
Well, and I think like I was thinking about the same thing. I think that that's key. I think if you hold this like absolute truth and like nobody's going to change my mind and this is the way it is, then
Mhm.
it stops being a conversation. Like you're unable to have a conversation from that point because anything that anybody's saying, you're already like thinking of rebuttals and you're not taking it in, I think, fully. And maybe not even open to hearing a different perspective.
Mm.
Like I feel like if you feel like it's absolute, you're just in teacher mode. Like, this is what I believe, this is the truth. So, like, you're kind of pushing it forward instead of just, talking and learning and listening and
Yeah, being in
being
student
open,
mode.
being in student mode.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when do students learn the most is when they're getting to teach themselves and when they're getting to be actively involved in their experience, not from sitting listening to us just tell them how it is. It just floats right over their head. They're in imaginative land in that moment, you know? So yeah, I think it's about that. It's the joy of learning and experimenting.
Yeah.
This is a great lead into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, Christy, because you've used the word experimenting. And as much as I think you would not describe yourself as a scientist, that is the way that I see you as a scientist.
Uh,
Yeah, because you are, so it's important for us to talk about this component of, and I just sort of want to introduce this. All three of us are on a spirituality path or a healing path or an expansion path or however you want to define it. And it's defined many ways in the mainstream media and in neo spirituality, but all three of us are on the path of learning. And I think that when we think about um, we are multidimensional beings. We've sort of arrived at this point that we can say, yes, we are multidimensional beings. And as we start to explore those edges of what it means to be a multidimensional being, we sort of exit the space that we can be taught from teachers and we enter the space we could be taught by spirit. We sort of exit the space that we can, find the information that will help us grow in our own paths. We exit the Google environment, and we enter into a space where we cannot Google the answers to the questions that we're being led to explore. And so I think it is important to sort of anchor this conversation just from the beginning, Christy, because I know that you have done a lot of work to theorize and research and create hypothesis and test the hypothesis. And so, whereas you might not say you're kind of grounded in the scientific method for many of the things that there are parts of what we're going to be talking about probably every week that, from a scientific method perspective, science is really just starting to explore some of these ideas. And we've seen it with many things with, all Christy, we could talk for probably so many things that science is just sort of starting to understand, but there does need to be a grace in terms of what the edges look like and how science has started to explore them. And I don't know if you want to speak to that, but you certainly can now at this part.
I love the way you said all of that. I feel like, yeah, that's exactly like exiting from looking for information in books. I feel like a lot of times I use the books to try to find the language to describe the things I'm being shown. So I might receive like a download or something of a geometrical symbol, and then I'll have like information about this symbol and an inner knowing about what it means, but I've never had any experience in the physical world with it. So I go looking, and that's what gets me to read books. And so that is how I kind of gather the information, is to go to the books to try to find the language to make sense of what I'm seeing and feeling and knowing inside of myself. And so, like, I will talk about things that I'm just learning about, like ether and plasma and quantum physics and stuff like that. But I don't have the be all know all answers. I'm just always, always in a process of discovery, of trying these things on and trying them in myself and trying them with things like tuning forks, or trying an alkaline diet so I can become more electromagnetic, or, just trying to sit
Science.
in like,
Science,
yeah,
exactly.
doing
Try
science
it.
on
What happens?
myself.
Write it down.
Working on sexual transmutation and like not exchanging fluids, stuff like that, just to see like what are the results of messing with my body enough to reach expanded states of
Exploring your body.
consciousness.
Exploring your body.
Exploring, yeah, exploring.
Exploring the
Yes,
edges of your body, Christy.
that's right. Yes, because I feel like yeah, I love the places that the mind goes. Like, this is my entertainment in life. I don't like going to boxes and being inside a box with a bunch of like fake lights and stuff. I like natural lights and nature and exploring just myself kind of, and others, and anyone who will do these journeys with me, because I just love the journeys. Like you guys, I'm just so thankful, because I think we really have a unique way of speaking and communicating about all of this. And so, the questioning that comes out of it, I have more questions, and then we get to go like look within for each of us and come back with answers. And so I'm really excited about sharing that with people. So I think this was a great idea for a podcast, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Guys,
good. The other thing that I think, the last thing that I sort of wanted to really speak into, or let us all speak into, is that when we are on the edge, our understanding of something could change just in an instant, and this is some of the beauty of the work of Jen and I, and you, Chrissy, as well. This is the beauty of conscious conversation. Somebody says something and it just instantly reframes your entire understanding of that thing,
yeah.
right? And you hold an entirely new idea. And it's not even just from somebody saying it. You have a dream, you read in a book, the Instagram algorithm is after you, when it's after you. And yeah, you come in and you're like, so just this idea that, and I know, Chrissy, this is important to you to talk about as well, that not even just because we're Gemini, not because we're women, not because we're multidimensional, not because we're scholars and scientists, right? It's because we're really on the edge and our understanding is changing just so quickly.
Yeah, and we all, I feel like, have an openness.
Hmm.
And I don't think that you can be on the edge or explore the edges or even approach them if you're not open.
Hmm.
I think it's really important because somebody will say something. If you're not open, you're just,
Yeah.
so how can you possibly like explore
Mm.
edges? And edges are like they're at the edge, right? Of like your belief system or what you've been presented with in your life or whatever. You're not even going to approach it if you're closed. You're just going to go, no.
Hmm.
But if somebody says something, you go, oh, I'll go look at that. Maybe I won't believe it, or maybe I won't
I'll
feel
walk
it.
down this
I'll
road
walk
with you
down
for a
it.
while.
Yeah, let's go. Let's see how it feels. Let's see what it looks like. And yeah, I think you just have to be curious and open. I think being open is key.
Hmm.
And I feel really lucky that I found open people in my life, like even outside of this circle, you know?
Yeah, the seekers.
Yeah.
Love that.
It is really important to be able to really, especially as a leader, and I think this is something, Chrissy, you and I have talked about often is, if you believe that even if your leadership is to create conscious community, and that's the form of leadership that you've been called into, regardless of what we think the leadership role is, when you're called into these leadership roles, you do have to hold a higher level of integrity around the work that you're doing. And I think it is important to have space that, what you think is true and helpful in one moment, you might find that, it was projection or mirroring or hurtful. You might gain an awareness that what you thought was helpful is harmful, or what you thought was true is not, or what you thought was somebody else's actions were actually your own. Like this is the work. This is what the path looks like. And so I do think it's important, not just for us, but for our audience to also hold space that things are changing.
And that more than one thing can be true at the same time, right?
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the magic.
Yeah, I don't really have anything more to add. I think this
Yeah.
is like, yeah, been a really great conversation, and I love all of it.